Games have always been a part of my life. I'm pretty sure I came out of the womb holding a Nintendo DS. But I became much more fascinated with the medium from 2014 to 2016. Learning how games were made, who made them in the first place, learning about the greatest games ever, what genres defined what era, a lot of stuff that turned me into the gamer I am today. And yes, feel free to cringe whenever I self-describe as gamer. And so I hold a lot of nostalgia for that era, not only for the feeling of discovery it gave me, but also for the games I often saw discussed. Games like Braid, Uncharted, Undertale, Halo, Journey, Mass Effect, Bastion, Grand Theft Auto, Shovel Knight, Fallout. Games that, realistically, if I had played them then, I would have missed why they were being discussed. These games always felt so far out of my grasp with my Wii U and 3DS, always catching short glimpses here and there in YouTube videos or in Game Informer pictures, because there was no way I was actually reading any games media then. It wasn't strictly that these were the grown-up games with all the guns and swearing and that I had to play them to show I wasn't a kid or something. It was that to me, these were the experiences that defined what games were, and so I had to play them to get video games. Since then, I have partially moved on from my Wii U and have actually gotten to play some of these games, but I always have this weird feeling when doing so, that I was too late and that I have missed out on something, that in a way I have missed the boat on these games, and as much as I do love some of the ones I've played now, there's already hundreds of articles, videos breaking them down and out, and it leaves me thinking, what would I have said back then? If somehow I could go back and articulate the thoughts and knowledge I have now in 2014, how would that have changed things? Would it have changed things? These are the thoughts that rattled throughout my head as I played Life is Strange, a game I struggle to even attempt to introduce because there's a good chance you know about it already, but I will try. Life is Strange was developed by Don't Nod Studios, a French-based indie game developer that at the time of Life is Strange's release specialized in one game, but is now mostly known for its narrative-driven single-player adventure games. Life is Strange was a massive hit when it came out, not only financially but critically as well, with many people praising its story and voice acting, and that's about it. I cannot understate how big of a hit Life is Strange was, not as a game, but as the type of game it was. A female-led, digital-only, episodically released, narrative-focused game about being a teenager in 2010 sounds like the recipe for an outdated, underselling, forgotten relic that came out far too early to be appreciated. But no, the game supposedly has had 20 million players worldwide experience this story, and that's insane! So you can see why it was part of that list of games I think about when it comes to the mid-2010s. I remember watching videos here and there about how it wasn't a real game because it was mostly talking, or how it was an amazing story for reasons I definitely would not understand. But as I lived my life and began playing more games and refining my taste as a gamer and critic, Life is Strange was one that I always would think about playing. I had forgotten almost everything about the game by a certain point, so any playthrough would be basically blind, but for the longest time I just never did. That was until one fateful night at a local GameStop when I finally saw a copy on PS4 and decided, why not, it's $20. Everything about what Life is Strange is feels tailor-made for one specific era and idea. One that I never experienced, not only because I didn't go to high school in 2014, but because I barely went to high school as is. I never said amaze balls, I don't live in the Northwest, I never had a flip phone, and I didn't read Rage comics growing up. And yet, this game fills me with nostalgia, this feeling of remembrance that I never got to live, or more accurately, never got to play. Before I move on to the plot, there's something I want to acknowledge first, and that's just how difficult it is to actually talk about the story overall. A main part of the gameplay is choice. The way I played the game, the choices I made, are not indicative of other people's playthroughs. My Max may have told the principal about a kid waving the gun around in the bathroom, but yours could have not. So it's hard to discuss the story in absolutes. While the overall plot plays out relatively the same regardless of the choices you make, certain plot moments become a lot more impactful or less impactful depending on what you choose before. Along with that, there are like 30 plus characters in this game that most of the time don't even matter in an episode's full plot but show up for like 5 seconds. And also this is a time travel narrative, so that's like 3 layers of I am screwed if I try to summarize this plot. So as much as I do love to write multi-page plot summaries to establish context for the whole analysis, because of what we are focusing on today, let's keep the summary to just the main points, and if I need to get into anything spoilery, I'll say so in advance. You play as Max Caulfield, a quiet, shy, kinda lonely high schooler coming back to her hometown of Arcadia Bay after 5 years away to enroll in Blackwell Academy and become the king of photography! Max wakes up from her doomsday nightmare and goes to the bathroom. After seeing a girl get shot, Max discovers her ability to travel back in time and uses it to save the blue-haired one from death. After a run-in with the less than favorable crowd at her school, Max learns that the girl being shot was actually her old friend Chloe Price, who is not happy about Max ditching her after all these years. With the two of them now reconnected, they discuss how insane Max is for thinking that Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within is a good movie. Oh, and because Max thinks she can travel back in time, but after proving she isn't insane, the two of them decide to set out and find Chloe's friend Rachel, who has been missing for the past few months. And already you can see that nostalgia in this game are essentially welded together. High school is a setting most have experienced or know relatively well and is a formative part of our past. Max herself is not only moving back to a town she grew up in, but has been away from for a while, letting the memory of her old town form. And the other important character, Chloe, is again linked to Max's past. As much as she wants to act as if Max has never changed, Chloe still only knows the memory of Max as a person. And even the main quest of finding Rachel is something that Chloe attaches herself to due to the memory of Rachel, wishing to rekindle a friendship that she can now only remember. And obviously there's Max's main ability of the game, traveling back in time only to fix the issues you know are issues after the thing has been done. All these relations to the past are more so done to see how you compare the past as an idea to the reality of the situation you are in now. Once you travel back in time, the reason you traveled doesn't exist. It's just an idea for you to attach yourself to and attempt to change the actual reality being put in front of you. Now you may be saying, no, of course the game is tied to the past, that's the whole point of the narrative. It's about reflecting on the choices we have made in the rose-tinted glasses we view the past in, allowing us to actually relive the moments where we made a mistake and change things. And yeah, I guess you probably already knew that, huh? Maybe I didn't really need to say anything. I mean, even if you haven't played the game, this is kinda all surface level stuff. I guess what could I add to this game that hasn't been said 100 times over? Alright, I guess we'll move on to talking about playing the game then. Now this next section may be called What It Is Like Playing a Game This Old, but like, the game's not that old if we're being honest. The main thing that sticks out like a blistering, sore thumb when playing this game is just how everyone talks. And I think you know exactly what I mean by this. Everyone in this game is so mean. This is a deadly, pessimistic, and sad game that makes every conversation feel like watching your friend's family fight when you come over for dinner. The conversations are awkward, messy, and leave every choice feeling like the best choice out of the worst decision tree possible. This becomes apparent as soon as the first conversation Chloe and Max have in the car, where no matter what you say, it feels as though Chloe's about to drive the car off a cliff with you in it. No one in this game is having a good time. They're either being bullied and harassed, or trying to keep so quiet that they avoid being bullied and harassed, or are a drug addict. And this is where the age of the game really starts to come into play. Now, is it funny that everyone in this game speaks as though they're chatting on Tumblr? Yes, but it's how they speak, mixed with the pessimism and severity of the whole story that makes it feel far more uncomfortable than just, we don't talk like that anymore. Everyone speaks with an ironic millennial humor that's all about overused slang mixed with saying the exact emotions someone is feeling, adding mad skills, hipster, da bomb to sentences that feel so far removed from the actual scene. Like, this is what Max has to say after sneaking into her school after dark, building a pipe bomb, inadvertently making her friend an accessory in the crime, and viewing photos her classmates submitted for a contest she's too afraid to even enter.
Take it easy on the door, Chloe. Let's try this instead. Boom! Literally. Yes! Time to blow shit up! If you'll light the candle?
Now I don't know about you, but to me, that reaction feels a little bit inappropriate given the context and the fact that we are doing this to help find a missing girl. Along with that, there's the issue of the story sometimes getting confused. One of the students who you can expose for being violent can eventually get suspended. Or, wait, was it expelled? Okay, so no, it was suspended. No, wait, he was expelled? Which is it? And even main plot points about characters like Chloe's stepfather supposedly spying on her family don't get addressed, really? At least I couldn't find anything specific about David spying on them, but it's still brought up as though it's common knowledge. And this all collided into one aspect that always got to me whenever it showed up. That stupid darn butterfly! Now the whole blank will remember this concept isn't a new one, even at the time of Life is Strange's release, but I feel its inclusion here is possibly the strongest I've seen it done. On the Game Developer Podcast, Telltale narrative designer Harison had this to say on the system. Quote, "From then on, once character will remember this appears, you're always wondering, what else is the game tracking? What else are you watching me do? And so the possibility space is much larger than what's actually in the game. Like we're probably only tracking a quarter or a tenth of what you're really doing, but you're like, oh, they're probably tracking everything." Unquote. That feeling that your actions will have repercussions and you don't know what they are going to be for a while after it has been done is such an eerie feeling. In my mind, whilst playing, everything about who I am in the game leads me down some path, some hidden labyrinth that I'm just sitting around waiting to enter. Even without me knowing, I've already set foot inside of it. And this is only heightened by the fact that my decisions are often made with confidence when given all of the information, which is a very important concept we will revisit. But it was all of this, the pessimism of the game, the unrecognizable dialogue, the often confusing and disjointed story, and the idea that the game was watching me that made me feel as though I'd actually stepped into another world. One that just didn't make sense. One that was barely recognizable, but it always felt so familiar, because I felt as though I was truly exploring and learning, that in a way I was discovering something new, even if it had been known and documented for years. As I said before, I knew this game was loved and adored. I was actively there watching some of the praise. But at the same point, I didn't remember a single plot point or detail about the actual game, aside from time travel and Storm. And it's my ignorance of the overall plot that made the feeling of discovery the game gave me with the strange world it's presented in really nostalgic for me. Now, I'm not saying that I get nostalgic every time a puzzle gets thrown my way, more so that the way the game was presented really helps you feel lost and confused in a scenario that is supposed to be familiar. When you start up, you don't know who Max is, what this school is, where you are, what's going on, anything. And while you can read Max's journal to get a bit more context into the events preceding the first episode, it really feels like you're on your own seeing the school and learning about the students and teachers in the general area of Arcadia Bay. It felt like that discovery period of games for me, when everything was new and exciting despite it being so well known and documented. There was this innocence in my discovery, a feeling that my ignorance was a form of bliss, helping me enjoy the game more because I was truly discovering. I didn't sweat the small details about the world around me and think critically about what they could have meant. Stuff like the missing girl posters on the wall were probably just set dressing. Those conversations about the school security didn't mean much to me right now because what mattered first was figuring out Max's time traveling. And this stupid Vortex Club thing I keep seeing around the school is probably just some side quest you can go on later. What these ideas would mean to me later on didn't matter because it wasn't what I was engaging with in the moment. When I talk about my experience with games in 2014 to 2016, I wasn't thinking about them the way I would now. Obviously, I wouldn't even have said narrative was my favorite aspect of games, I probably would have said it was blue. So to inhabit that older mindset, the one that didn't focus on the same aspects as I do now, but instead brushed them aside, made me realize how different not only my voice as a critic and player had become, but also why I enjoy games in the way I do now. Because eventually, that innocent discovery period ends. Eventually it reaches its breaking point, and the knowledge you have gained from all the explorations and conversations you have had with people around Arcadia Bay leads you crashing into the reality of the world. You can't stay in that discovery mindset forever. The truth of the situation becomes too loud and you have to move on. You have to be willing to use the knowledge you have gained, no matter how insignificant it may seem to you, and use it to define your Max. One aspect of Max I really enjoyed seeing was her passion for photography. Her obsession with old cameras, her appreciation of her teacher Mr. Jefferson as an artist, and the ability to take photos while exploring really made her feel like a growing artist. However, it is realistically the least important aspect of Max as a character. Yes, it's what drove her to go to Blackwell in the first place, and yes, it obviously fits back into the ideas of nostalgia we were talking about, since photos are literally frames from the past. But throughout the story, her love for it never really peaks its head. When the innocent discovery period ends and Max delves into the missing Rachel, her education, or more specifically her photography, kinda goes forgotten. However, you can still take photos throughout the game. Pretty much every area you explore has some photo you can take, and I always went out of my way to try and take them whenever I could. They're never required, but they made Max feel more like Max. It made her feel like the nerdy photographer I saw sitting in class, the one who popped in her headphones and went to the bathroom to wash her face. But who is this Max? As I said, by the time the game ends, Max has gone through so much stuff that the framing of a photo is the last thing on her mind. But with each prompt that appears, we can see that side of Max again, the one that geeked out over tripods and vintage cameras. But is this idea I'm attaching myself to actually Max? Or am I just romanticizing the past, believing that this is Max and not the memory of her, that she still is the nerdy photographer and not the tired, traumatized, and hurt detective we see throughout each episode? Max is not an easy character to define, not only for the reasons we have gone through, but because every decision Max makes isn't really a decision. The ability to travel back and erase any possible outcome you didn't like made the stakes of this game feel almost non-existent. Max is a character defined by process of elimination more than anything else, going back and forth in time until you reach what you think is the best decision. So who actually is Max then? There's one moment when I started playing the game that made me freeze. It's when Max is checking out the old cameras her teacher has on display.
This is definitely where cameras go to heaven. Oh man, they have those sweet ultrasonic lenses. And look at that vintage rangefinder. What?
When this dialogue stopped, I literally froze with only one thing running through my head. Oh my god, she is me. That know-it-all nerd who gushed over their own knowledge was the exact gamer I was, even if I was nowhere near utilizing it. Someone who just loved knowing the fact that the Genesis and Atari 2600 used the same controller ports. The nerd who thought it was so cool that Rare kept making GBA games even after being bought by Microsoft. These moments with Max, the ones where I saw more of the nerdy side of her, are what made me want to prioritize the photos throughout each level, because it showed to me a character I wanted to see. So I think I know who that Max was. She was me. She was a character comprised of my choices, with each choice I made being an attempt to bring back that Max I saw in the beginning. Only I made the decisions and choices in the way I did. Only I found the photo spots I wanted to take. Only I rewound what I thought were my mistakes. I was defining myself in relation to all the other Maxes who might be out there, the ones the game shows me when an episode is over. At the end of each episode, the game will display the stats of each choice and what percentage of players chose what. Looking through them, I was often hit with two things. One, wow, I didn't even know some of these were choices because man, the game sucks at directing you towards them. And two, what were the choices the players made before these? I'm sure that if we looked at each percentage and took the averages, we would have the most common Max, the one who did X, Y, and Z in this specific order only after these events. But I take issue with calling this entity, the one comprised of averages, Max, because it doesn't account for one thing, the person making these decisions. Even if someone made the same decisions I made, they didn't talk to the same amount of people as me. They didn't rewind for the reasons I did, and they certainly aren't here talking about them in the way I am right now. Those moments where I chose to take a photo of whatever was around Max are my moments. The ones that made me and showed how I stand out, and became a lot more important to define myself once I started reading about all the other Maxes out there, the ones with the path I didn't choose. We've talked about defining your Max in relation to others, but being confident in that Max is a different thing altogether, especially when exposed to all the other Maxes out there. You can probably tell what metaphor I'm going for here, but just hold on. When doing some reading on Life is Strange, I came across an old impression/review piece on Vice by Reid McCarter, around the launch of the third episode or so. Just like the game itself, I felt like I was experiencing a weird snapshot of time, where the game was not only new, but no one knew what it was building to. All the twists and turns the game would take had not been revealed yet, and the writer I was reading was responding to a game that no longer existed. Nothing about the piece stood out to me really, it's more about the power fantasy the game provides by being able to change the past, but its existence interested me. I often use older games writing in my work, mainly because I still believe it's relevant even if the examples of games or moments aren't the most up to date, but I'm always filled with this strange feeling about doing so. I often question whether the writer would even agree with the work I am citing, whether they would have gone back and changed things or whether they would have made the piece in the first place. And it leads me to question how others will see my work once it is out there. My videos, once they have been released, have gone through 3 separate forms of editing. Me writing and rereading everything I have typed, adding and deleting, me speaking it, sometimes adding and deciding not to say things, and me actually editing the video where, surprise surprise, I do edit things. With my work, I can change the past. I can stop the old Noah from saying something I don't think flows well or add clarification in parts where I feel it is unclear how I am describing something. But by a certain point, by the time I hit export and upload on YouTube, that's it. No more changes, no more slight edits, no more fixing the mistakes. The mistakes in the work I have made become me. Even with Life is Strange's main gimmick of rewinding and changing the past, you do eventually have to stop going back. Eventually you reach a definitive end when the credits roll on each episode, and the Max you were for the past hour or two is final. There's no more tiny edits or quick fixes. You have to be confident and say, this is my Max. This is what I believe. And that confidence is scary to face. Not only because of the repercussions the game makes apparent you will face later on, but because what if you stop agreeing with those ideas you had to be confident on in the moment? Again, there is a point where the game says you don't get to go back. Your Max said X and it's gonna stay X no matter what. The present you made by altering the past can become what you lament in the future. And it's a fear I often have as a critic, that someone had said what I said better, or that I will eventually look back on my ideas and cringe, or even that my ideas are too far-fetched and I'm grasping at straws. That to make any actual progress in my work I have to keep redoing and editing all the material until it's perfect by process of elimination and not because I'm actually any good. But you still have to make that choice. You still have to decide something for Max to do, even if it's after you have been given all of the information, or none. There's no auto picker or designated path for you to walk down. There isn't a way to make a Max that isn't in some way indicative of you. That's where the strength of the game's choices really lie. It's being confident enough in who you are to make a final stance on something. Ignoring those concerns of how you could feel later on or what others may have said before you, the game is about helping decide a path you want your max to take, and being confident in that idea, and specifically your choice to go down it. Even if it takes 100 rewinds to find where you stand, even if it's the most commonly picked choice, it's your decision, and only you made it for your reasons. Before I leave you all and disappear back into another playthrough of Sonic Adventure 2, I want to acknowledge something first, and that's my choice to frame my experience with Life is Strange as nostalgic. I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm 21, nostalgia isn't really a thing you feel before a certain point, and I'm not there yet. Again, like I said, the game is only 11 years old. So why use nostalgia? Well, because it is a commonly known word that easily represents the feelings of remembrance the game describes and is a very important theme of Life is Strange as a work, but mainly because of the simplistic mindset it inhabits. Nostalgia is inherently regressive. It's an embodiment of a simpler moment in someone's life, one not fraught with the issues they face in the current day, whether they be mundane or imperative to their existence. And while that aspect of nostalgia can be dangerous and lead to someone far too immersed in the past to actually face the reality they are in, that same regression can also be used to help educate and show what it is you value about yourself. I missed out on the games that were released during the time I truly began to learn and appreciate games. There's no going back and playing Transistor when it was the hot game of the month and being there when all the discussion around it was new. But even if I could go back right now and change that one specific aspect of how I approach games, I wouldn't be right here using it as an example, valuing it in the way I do because I played it when I did. Fear of repetition and criticism is fairly common. What does it matter what I say if someone else has said it and probably better? Why go back and see what you could have said differently if you're just going to go back and make the same decision? But that's not the point of games criticism. It's not about being the first or even the best. It's about being the most you, defining your voice and how you approach games regardless of how others see them, or even how you could potentially see yourself later on. Be confident in your choice to play games, whether they be new or old. Be confident in how you see them, even if it doesn't make sense and requires 1,000 redos to get right. And be confident in your voice. Only you have it.